from that cuckold in the Northeast, the land of reverence and colonialism. This is Dark Hour Paranormal. And welcome. I am your host, Michael Roser. And tonight, this evening, we're going a little bit earlier this evening, which is fine. I see a lot of fantastic faces here tonight. Thank you very much for joining us. First and foremost, tonight, folks, we are going to be talking once again to a very, very good friend of mine, constituent, affiliate, and, well, co-worker. Jared Murphy is back to talk to us tonight about a few interesting concepts that, perhaps some of us have visited over the years. We've heard things in the wind, we've seen things written on the wall, but we haven't had a comprehensive dissertation about ancient technologies and the integration of such. And as a, well, maybe not so peripheral, but as another angle here, we're going to be looking at Synesthesia. Did I say it right? I just looked this up before the show, and I flubbed it. Synesthesia. Okay? Synesthesia? That's going to bother me. Anyway, I do have Jared back again this evening here to discuss a lecture that he has coming up on the 24th out in Salem, New Hampshire, which is really just a stone's throw away from America's Stonehenge. And of course, those of you who have been following along with us for some time here do remember the documentary that Jared Murphy and I had put out on America's Stonehenge maybe about a year and a half ago. As comprehensive as that was, we had decided to go back and do a bit more research as time went forward. We've actually integrated some of the other archaeological sites of interest within the area, and we're looking at this phenomenon now as a whole, perhaps not just focusing on one site, because as we understand, there are around 800 ancient sacred sites here in the Northeast alone, let alone the rest of the country. So with that in mind, not to get into too much detail here, we are working on a documentary together that will display some of that and the findings that we come from and certain results that we have come upon within the research and visiting different places out in the field. Very interesting sites, I must say. This being said, if you're interested in the area of Massachusetts, New Hampshire, or any of the surrounding states, let us know if you're interested in attending. Again, it's the September the 24th, a little short notice, but believe me, it's going to be something you don't want to miss. Go to notaliens.com, or you can contact me directly. You can contact Jared. The contact information is below in the description. And of course, you can find his contact on his website as well. He does have a fantastic YouTube channel, which he's also put out certain content on that I think many would enjoy. Please go and check that out. That is also Not Aliens here on YouTube. All right, folks, without further ado, once again, thank you all for being here, moderators and viewers alike. I'm going to bring on my good friend, Jared Murphy. Jared, how you doing this evening, my friend? Thanks for being with us and having an opportunity to talk to us a little bit about what you're going to be discussing at length within this lecture on September 24th. How goes the battle, mate? I hear you. We'll wait for Jared to come back in here. I know he's off on an excursion right now. He is in transit, and we are kind of attempting to wing this as best we can, given what we have to work with. That being said, Cashew Gusenheit, thank you so much for dropping Not Aliens link down there in the chat. Guys, you don't even have to do any of the work, the legwork yourself. Just go ahead and click that link, and you will find a lot that Jared has been researching for quite some years now. Again, Jared, I am sorry, can't hear you. I think he's going to pop back in just a moment, so we'll give him a moment to do that. Now, a quick update on the documentary. I do have some good news. Okay, there are some more participants that are joining us with this documentary. And again, I'm not the kind of person that wants to sit on something any longer than I have to. But in this circumstance, it's going to be for a very good reason. And I think the final outcome, the final product here, will certainly reflect the time that we are taking to put this together. So once again, as I've mentioned it before, but for the first time tonight, I appreciate all of your patience in doing this. And believe me, I will not let you down when this comes out. All right, we're going to give Jared another run here. Jared, how you doing, my friend?
Good. I'm so sorry. Am I back?
You are here for the first time, but back for you.
Oh.
Yes.
Well, then a happy Synesthesia day to you.
Oh, well, thank you very much. Thank you very much. I like colors as sight and sound as colors. And
the next person?
Hey, it's why we all tried hallucinogens when we were younger. Anyway, listen, so I understand that you will be leaving the wonderful state, or I should say the city here of Minnesota, correct? And coming out to New Hampshire a little bit later this month to give us a full-on lecture about ancient technologies and how they're integrated along with the Synesthesia. You say the word that we were just discussing. Synesthesia. Okay, we'll go with that. Thank you.
Yeah. Wrap it.
Where would you like to start with this? This is a topic, again, that, as I mentioned in the description prior to, we visited it here and there. Perhaps even, you look at the thumbnail tonight, you see some of these petroglyphs, these hieroglyphs that demonstrate what appear to be not only aircrafts, but conventional aircrafts. Where do you want to start with this, Jared?
Oh, man. First, I want to thank everyone for dealing with our connection issues, because I am in mountains and I am exploring over the holiday and now into this week. So we really wanted to talk. Michael is a good friend. We have done all this so much, and I want to thank everyone for dealing with my my not so fancy connection issues on the phone here. That's where I'll start. But as far as where we're going to start with the integration, it's exactly kind of the things that have been coming up with these advanced fighter pilot, like the F-22, those pilots and planes that are integrated to have sound, mind, verbal, and mental control of weapon systems, all sorts of flight controls. These are integrations and systems that, for those of you who are definitely in love with the UFO world and high technology today that we see in what we call modern technology, we are tapping into waves and frequencies that we understand currently of the brain. My general lecture, and I realized in you and I spending all that research time and working on another documentary for America's Stonehenge, that I was trying to combine two things for people here. So I am doing exactly what Michael's talking about. I'm coming out. We're going to do a 3-hour conversation that is not going to be about America's Stonehenge, in the sense that we're going to be talking about truly advanced, ancient, very advanced megalithic ruins, synesthesias as one example of a genetic built-in, what we think of as some people have this system, and how might it relate?
Forgive me for interrupting for just a moment. Can you define, for those who are not familiar with synesthesia, can you define that for us?
It is one of the amazing, weird, quirky human traits that is said to be within 25 to 30-ish% of the human race, that their senses combine to produce different effects. Some, it might be when they see a number, they see a color. Some, it might be a smell, and it might be a texture, like they have a contact synesthesia where they can actually witness like two people hugging and they could feel it, like literally feel the hug. And there are other dimensional synesthesias. They affect all of our senses, visually and mentally. And it's always taken for granted that it's an ability that would be just, that's an interesting quirk. It's like some people can naturally juggle or speak two languages, but then they don't do it. And so
do you think this is something in Jared?
What was that? Do you think this is something what?
Do you think that this is something inherited or something that can be learned, or could it be both? What do you think?
I definitely think it's something that we're could tap into directly. Yeah, and that's part of the conversation of what I want to do, is get that out there, and really go into the details and examples of how would a technology like this apply within an advanced ancient society.
Now, do you think this is on the psychic level, or do we have any evidence of physical attributes that we can say is correlated to this particular phenomenon?
Well, and now we're hitting into the details of the lecture. So yes, we are going to talk about how even the Greeks and even in early modern psychological studies, this ability has been accounted and noted and pondered on for years because, well, it's fascinating. And we're going to go and
We lost you for a minute there, Jared. Give it just a moment, and hopefully you'll be right back. We certainly appreciate Jared taking the time, through his schedule here to be with us tonight, and we do apologize once again for some of the technical difficulties. But we'll work with the best of what we got here. Jared, why don't you pop off and come back on if you can hear me? There we go. Perfect. All right, we'll see him return. It's interesting. I remember many, many, many years ago, as a musician, I was writing music, and in my head, I was seeing certain colors associated with the music that I was writing. To me, the note A was always red, D was green, E might have been blue. I think G was orange, F was yellow. There were different colors that corresponded. And though this is sort of an internal depiction of this phenomenon that Jared is talking about, I think there is some relevance to that. And oddly enough, when I had a reading many years later, out of the blue, the psychic said, "Hey, you see colors when you play music, don't you?" And I was like, "Yeah, absolutely, I do." Jared is back. Here we go, brother.
Hey, can you hear me?
I can.
All right, yeah. So the details of the lecture are to really look at the Greeks and Romans and the modern examples of people who have been studied and how this ability would have functioned with ancient megalithic technologies and building constructions, like how it would relate and how it would look, how you would see it.
Well, here's a very curious question as we're on this subject. KM asks, is Synesthesia, oh my God, I'll get it eventually, right? Is Synesthesia like when you see someone yawn and it causes another to yawn too? KM, that's a fantastic question. I think we've lost Jared again, but we'll find out in a moment. Jared, as soon as you can hear this and you can hear me, go ahead and make a holler and I can bring you on there. I think, again, this is a very good question because I believe that there is an aspect of this, the way that Jared is describing. That's curious. That's curious, though. And at the same time, I wonder, because we do have certain connections, is this something, is it a mechanism within the brain to, yawn when you see someone else yawn? Evolutionary per course, okay? If you look at the evolution and, you think of Darwinism and so forth, it doesn't really seem to fit in the realm of survival. But hey, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe somebody knows something that I don't when it comes to understanding this particular biological phenomenon. Here he is.
Hey, how are you? How's it going?
Good. So, sorry, you were saying?
Yeah, I think I think in the most obvious way, and I've never thought to use it as an example, but in all the ways we've gone 10 to 15% conscious, and most of our abilities have become unconscious and primitive. I think the yawning is a brilliant example that they brought up that easily could be on the simplest level are that broken technological system still functioning just on the most basic, like static electrical level of just running your feet across the carpet to create static electricity. Like it's one of the, it absolutely could be a basic functionality of that.
Mm-hmm. As you had sort of popped off for a moment, I don't know if you caught this, but KM had asked the question, is Synesthesia similar to, or is this an example of Synesthesia where you see someone and have the impulse to yawn yourself? Is that an example?
Yeah, 100%. I absolutely think it is.
Okay. How do we relate all of this to frequency now? I mean, obviously it's sort of a dodgy subject when we start talking about frequency. There's a little left to be desired when it comes to the grounding on such scientific understanding, pseudoscience people call it. Where does the frequency come in when we talk about Synesthesia?
I think the hardest part is going to be connecting to the actual quartzes and frequencies that are being utilized within these constructions, within our genetics, within terra preta, that engineered soil we've talked a lot about, the different frequencies for different functions. I think we could more narrow the functionality of each of those frequencies and their jobs, or we could imagine better the machines and what they would be used for if we can more sort out these interconnections between synesthesias and the work of just building physical constructions to sending and receiving signals with nothing in the middle other than our own thoughts, like yawning from one person to another. I think it's a very interesting field of, I don't even know if we can call it archaeofrequency, or, you know, we do archaeoacoustics, but I think the broader band of archaeoacoustics is really archaeofrequencies, and I don't think we really have a term for it yet. I'm making it up right now.
Well, that's sometimes what we have to do. We improvise, and next thing you know, this becomes more of a commonly used word within the fields that we explore. So again, that's how a lot of this is sort of born. It's not coming out of any sort of world of academia, most of it, I can say. Let me ask you this question, because we all have a certain understanding about hallucinogens and how they affect the mind, the body, the brain in certain ways. Of course, there's a lot that we're still learning about the impact of hallucinogens. But one thing that we can all certainly agree on is that there have been experiences, not just in modern times, but in ancient times, where people would experience synesthesia with a hallucinogen. And to me, always seemed to be something natural we sort of tap into. We're breaking down some of those barriers within our mind. Maybe they're protective barriers to keep out certain stimuli. Certainly, if, again, I've said it before, if we're bombarded by all stimuli at once, that's going to be very overwhelming for us. So I think we have certain constructs in our mind, our brain, that limit how information is received and processed. So when you take hallucinogen, it strips away that sort of retardation of information coming in, and it all just hits you at once. So when you look at ancient people, okay, do you find in your studies, or in your opinion, that they were experiencing synesthesia outside of ritualistic use of hallucinogenic plants and so forth?
Yeah, I really do think this goes back to the basics of banging on the blinky board. I think this was daily use technology that's been reduced to a spiritual quandary of, we bang on it really hard with drugs, and we get the brain to snap into its most highest functions, but in a very convoluted, you're not supposed to bang on the control panel of the 747. You're supposed to turn the dials and program stuff in. It's not based on a loose wire. And essentially that's where we're at. We have 10 to 15% consciousness, and then we leap, we just lightning speed, Mach 20, leap into high function and go, oh, we're having a spiritual experience. No, you just jammed your body with an artificial juice, chemical, fill in the blank. It's like steroids, like you and I deciding we're going to go train and get ripped, and we're going to lift really, really, really heavy weights, but we're not going to do it naturally. We're going to we're going to use artificial steroids and chemicals, and we're going to lift ourselves up to an ability that we don't earn. We just jump into it through an artificial influence. And I think, although we get windows of lucid experience, I think overall, when you use those drugs, and I find, by the way, there's a duality of saying this. For those willing to explore and detail and chronicle their experiences, we don't have those explorers. We are going to know a lot less. I am not condoning or recommending anyone do anything illegal ever. At the same time, for those spiritually also that have found their spiritual path, it's important to stick with what is inspiring you spiritually. But I do think that the chemicals and the things that they're doing with whether it's peyote or the ayahuascas or acid in any capacity, I think we're tripping into a realm that if we were fully conscious, those abilities, they would be at our fingertips and they would be at will and they would be instant and they would be coherent and they would not be something we would have to draw on with all our might and strength and get for 20 seconds.
Well, let me interject just for a moment here because I've certainly had my experiences when it came to these medicinal plants and otherwise. One of the things that people had always put forth was, in terms of an explanation, was that once you pop into this reality, it's supposed to give you that momentary dislocation. I would say is probably the word. It's not even a word, I'm sure. It would just put you off in such a way that it would relocate you for a moment so that you had the understanding that there is a reality that's much deeper and richer than perhaps your five, six senses are actually picking up. And this was an idea, at least, was to use this as a tool. Okay, it wasn't necessarily something that you're going to take every day. You don't need to go into this all the time. You need to just go into this as many times as you need to in order to learn whatever the particular chemical has to teach you. Now, with that being said, we understand biologically that we do have receptors for many of these medicinal plants, as we would call them today. And if we didn't have receptors, I would agree and say this is an artificial agent that we're introducing into our body. And I do understand why you say it that way. In certain senses, yes, you can absolutely say it's foreign because we're not producing it naturally, unless it's something like DMT, which you just overload your system with. If you're taking it in that respect, it's already produced in the brain. Cannabinoids in the same way. So, when we look at some of these ancient civilizations and how they were utilizing these medicine or these medicinal plants, I'll say, there was an understanding of going into a different world, but only knowing that you'd be there temporarily. The idea was to take whatever information you could get in those worlds, bring it back, anchor it into this body, into your waking consciousness without any sort of substance, and live out that information. Because perhaps for some of us, it's not accessible just walking around in our waking consciousness. The same way that if you were to go and dream tonight, you might have some sort of premonition that because your mind is so busy or being inundated with stimuli throughout your waking hours, you couldn't reach it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I have two observations on what we're talking about at this exact moment. One, you touched on one of the most important parts that is so hard to explain to everyone, and it's so serious, but I can't help but lead with, if there was a way to make taking drugs sound less exciting.
Sorry,
oh, no,
again?
Did I lose you?
No, I did for just a second. They said if there was any way to make taking drugs less exciting, yeah, that's all I heard.
I feel like we've done it. That. Can you still hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, no, I think the most important point that is really lost, and you went right through it. You know those natural receptors you're talking about?
Mm-hmm.
I believe that those natural receptors were programmed and are part of a greater terrestrial system that we take for. This is part of that biotechnical system that was by design, not by accident. I think that those. You there?
Yeah, you're breaking up. It's like going in and out.
Oh, well, I can give it another shot.
Yeah, keep going.
All right. Well, I believe it's part of a biotechnical ancient system. I believe those natural receptors were part of a conscious system. It wasn't. Mm-hmm. Now we drop into it like a dream state. On occasion, get a little flash of the BIOS, something we think is super significant. And then in the reality of the ancient megalithic builders, this is a fully conscious, integrated biotechnical system, which included those natural receptors by design. They're not unintentional. They're program code.
Who's programming us that way?
I don't consider, I'm not saying it like we're robots. I'm saying that in the terraformed planet that we have to the giant megalithic constructions, that what we appear to be natural biological systems, they're natural, but they're biotechnical programming. I don't think that our connections to these natural receptors are there because we accidentally can connect to these different systems. I just
Mm-hmm.
think they were more conscious and intentional. They were beyond just dream state. They were clarifying states of consciousness that could be
Yeah.
stayed in and not burn out on.
Interesting. Interesting. I think, eventually the idea is to not need to use any sort of medicinal plant. You already bring yourself to a state of awareness where, that tool has been null and void for all intents and purposes. It's served its purpose. If we are programmed in one way or another, wherein the receptors are there intentionally, I mean, it's something we may stumble upon as we go forward, or perhaps something that's smacking us in the face right now. We certainly just don't have an answer yet. But you know, again, what keeping in mind, the Synesthesia and how this sort of it's one of those revelations that you can have, under that type of influence. Let's put it that way. And there are many that perhaps defy explanation that are beyond what you would consider just a hallucination within those realms, those states of mind that may be more reminiscent of something we would understand perhaps with a spiritual body or spiritual mind at the forefront. Again, this is research that we are certainly still working with. And yet, at the same time, we go back to integrating these ancient phenomenon of synthenesia into what people decided to put together in respect to ancient technologies. And after you answer that, I do have another question I should have asked you earlier.
That is true. Am I still coming through for you? Because I missed some of it as far as like its natural ability to connect.
I mean, I hear you okay. I'm not sure where you lost me.
Oh, good. Okay, yeah, you cut a little in and out, but I think that you're dead on with the idea that we have to continue to acknowledge and also look at the potential interconnections. I think it's hard to see the scope and scale of the value of these psychotropics, the value of how we may have connected with them more at will, or that the ability to connect wasn't even ritualistic. It was something that we could do like dialing a cell phone. Unless that didn't come through.
Yep, now it's on my end. All right, we're back. Sorry to Jared. Boy, we're riddled tonight, aren't we, huh? Man,
oh man,
man.
we should. This is if ever there was an episode for us to do a drinking game for everyone, this is it. How often do they lose their connection?
Yeah, exactly. Everybody would be hammered by the end of the show, and God, it's only an hour. Let me bring it back just a little bit here. Okay, so one of the last things I had asked you was, do you think that some of these ancient people were inspired by the phenomenon of synthenesia to create the ancient technologies that they worked with that perhaps don't seem to fit within the history that we understand?
Totally. Yes.
How so? How so?
I think that when we hear stories of the sages, of the oracles, like Delphi, there's a famous one, right? I think that even when we go back to whether it's Plato or we go back to Solon the Greek and the stories of Atlantis and the high Egyptian priests talking about their 36,000-year-old king's list, I think the legends of the myths of and the reality of actual sages, people who were considered, people who could have second sight. I think that as we even look back in the millennia, in this last fallen period since the Younger Dryas, I think there are people who have been more conscious towards this broken system exponentially as we go back in the human timeline. And it's not that it's based on where we were in the timeline that people can't have extraordinary abilities now. I think they're more and more an exception and more an unconscious, a dream state ability, because we see these examples of predictions, or I guess another famous one would be to say, maybe even, in Russia, if we were looking at modern versions of soothsaying, and we can't really nail it down, but why is it that there seems to be groups of people that constantly are legitimately statistically able to predict?
Sorry, give me 1 second here, Jared. This is quite discombobulated, unfortunately, and it's no fault of anyone. The technology is not keeping up with us today. It's either on Jared's end or it's on my end. I mean, it's both. Any given moment here, we're dealing with this. And I understand that my region has been dealing with a lot of rain lately. Maybe that has something to do with this. I haven't had issues with the internet for quite some time. All right, Jared, listen, here's what I want to do, because I know we're having some issues with this. We're about halfway through the show. God damn it. All right. Well, listen. We're gonna get the important stuff out here. Listen, Jerry, can you hear me?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes. Okay. As we have each other for the moment here,
I'm gonna get
let's do this.
I'm going to get a dark hour discount for everyone that wants to get lecture tickets. That'll be available tomorrow. But what would you like to do to follow up, since we suck for connecting?
No, absolutely. Let's just do this, because again, we're halfway through the show and we keep having issues on both our ends of the connection, and it's really kind of fucking with the continuity here. Let's get the important stuff out of the way. So you're going to be in New Hampshire in
September 24th, or Saturday, September 24th. Can you hear me? Of course not.
Jared, tell me about the lecture.
Saturday live, either on digital, you can listen in, you don't have to come, you can come live to Salem, New Hampshire, September 24th, Saturday, September 24th in the morning at 9 a.m. Eastern Time. And then after a 3-hour conversation, we are going to head over to America's Stonehenge and do a tour of America's Stonehenge and kind of walk around where we did our documentary and check everything out with Dennis Stone at America's Stonehenge, about 10 minutes away.
Fantastic.
Also, I want to get everyone, if we can get on the air again, tomorrow I will have a discount. Anyone that wants to throw in Dark Hour will get at least 25% off for tickets if they want to listen online or show up.
Fantastic, fantastic. And Dennis, the curator of America's Stonehenge, is a very wonderful individual, full of information and knowledge. And so certainly ask the questions when you go out and see him. And Jared also will be able to answer many of your questions. Jared, I hate to say this, man. I think we got to cut it short today, bud. I am so sorry.
Too. No, I'm sorry to everyone. We gotta.
You know what? The whole idea here, I wanted to go more into detail about, the integrated technologies. We'll revisit up with a few things that you speak on there. Long story short, folks, come on out to New Hampshire and Salem. Come see Jared's lecture. I was privy to attend one with him last year. He does a fantastic job, very comprehensive. If you're in the area, please come on out. We'll give you the discounted tickets here. We have deals. So listen, there's no that you can't unless you're working or got to be with family. Otherwise, come on out here. You don't want to miss this, and we will certainly be looking forward to seeing your faces. Jared, thank you so much for coming on tonight and letting us know what you have coming up. Of course, I'm going to have you back on sooner than later here so we can follow up with what we were speaking on, and there are a couple other topics I wanted to touch on with you. So, folks, certainly keep your eye out for that. Any parting words before we unfortunately have to get going here?
Well, I appreciate yours and everyone's time. Sorry about the connection. We'll talk soon.
All right. Thank you very much, Jared. I will talk to you, my friend, very shortly. Damn, I'm disappointed. I can't remember the last time I had to cut a show short because of this issue with the internet, and it looks like I'm a little fuzzy too. Either way, listen, I want to thank all of you guys for coming in tonight and speaking with us. And I've seen you guys in the chat, obviously enjoying what we're speaking on. It's a topic that I want to explore further. I have many questions when it comes to synesthesia. Nope, hold on. Synesthesia, right? Who put it in there? J. Marcus. Synesthesia. Thank you. That's all I really needed too, was to see that phonetic pronunciation. Been okay. Listen, really, go and check out Jared's work. If you can't attend the lecture that he's putting on, I'm certain that you can catch it on a Zoom as well, live. I'm certain. If not, Jared will certainly have that available for you in some sort of package deal on his site after the fact. So definitely no reason not to catch this, and keep your eye out for the documentary that we are working on together. And that should be at the helm here. I don't know when it'll be released, but if I'm mentioning it, it won't be too long. I'll tell you that much right now. Moderators, super chatters, I know you're super chatters out there. You guys are great. You really are. I thank you and appreciate you from the bottom of my heart. Moderators, the same thing. My God, we are still with everyone as we have it. Obviously missing Misty OC Dragons terribly, but that, unfortunately, for what it's worth, will never change. All right, folks, listen, we're going to get this internet thing fixed up, and next time we are back, it's going to be much smoother. I'll promise you that. In the meantime, stay explorative, continue to research this beautifully nebulous field that we all traverse in search of the truth together. Because once again, as I must reiterate, with all the infighting that happens in ufology and other parts of our field, we're in this together. Let's stick together. Let's discover this together, because you know what? You ain't taking anything with you when you die. So, might as well enjoy it now. Folks, we'll see you next time. Once again, thank you for your patience and your presence. Ciao.